Hello, everyone. This is Piers, CEO of RDX Works. Today, I'm joined by the Chief Strategy Officer, Adam, Chief Technology Officer, Russell, and Chief Marketing Officer, Jeremy. And today, we're going to be going through the roundtable discussion questions that we've been getting from the community. These tend to be some of the deeper, more chunky questions, and it's an opportunity for everyone in the team to sort of have a little chat about those and address some of the questions that are coming up as a result of that. So, first of all, Q1 is coming to a close in a couple of weeks. How is Babylon progressing? What have we learnt since the Alexandria launch? Russell, let's start off with you on this.
So it's going very, very well. We released Alexandria with a set of assumptions about certain design patterns that we thought were the right way that would let us enable building any kind of DeFi app, both things that are existing and things that weren't possible before. And those assumptions have been proved out well. And for example, our model of authorization, where we use badges instead of the traditional pattern where you have this, who's the originator of the transaction. This has been very well received and has been just as flexible and powerful as we hoped. But we have learned that some of our V1 implementations of things like authorization were not the most intuitive and not the most user-friendly. So a lot of our work has been on a couple of things where we've said, okay, the core concept has done well, but let's go back to design on what that implementation is. And authorization is a perfect example of that. And in fact, the next release of Scripto has a complete re-architecture to move authorization all the way to the system level in a way that's easily understandable and explainable to developers. And also part of that came out of what we learned from Alexandria was just the transaction layer that we released in Scripto 0.3 this way, where you build up this, it's like a complete flow of all the things you want to have in your transaction done completely outside of Scripto code, at the level of you could think of it as the front-end developer is able to orchestrate this series of actions shall happen, and then the wallet can get a nice visual presentation of all the things that are going to occur with a nice preview of it, and then they can sign it, and the things that they expect to happen do happen on the network. So I'd say at this point, we're now past the point of knowing what works and what doesn't work, and we're on to now the implementation of the last big Scripto features, and then on to a bunch of under the hood stuff to have everything that we're doing in a local simulator environment run on a test network.
So basically some of this has been from the work within the team, right? And then some of this has also been from the feedback that we've sort of received from the community.
Yep. I'd say there's certainly some set of people have really, really engaged with building their own tools atop the things that we put out and offering really good concrete suggestions on ways where even down to the syntax of things in the code where this could be made easier for the user if this was done in a different way, or this had better error handling and that sort of thing. So this is all stuff that we have taken on board. And even if it isn't released yet, they're all have been turned into Jira tasks and so forth, and we're marching towards it.
And just overall, like how was Builders Week? Like what was what were you guys aiming to achieve in Builders Week, and how do you feel like it went?
Yeah, in Builders Week, we went away with the entire Builders team for almost 2 weeks at the undisclosed location somewhere in the Mediterranean Sea, and we wanted to tackle a few things. One was getting all the high risk elements left in the design, coming down to either an absolute concrete answer on how we're going to solve them, or down to we know one of the following 2 or 3 options will work, and we at least have our after doing some prototyping, we'll know where we go. That went fantastically well, and that every single high-risk item we got down to, we know it will be one of these solutions, which was a thing that was very much weighing on the back of the mind. And we also got down to a planned set of releases, both for things in its Scripto functionality and also as far as, okay, these are the following test networks we're going to need, and these are the goals we're trying to achieve with them, and getting better clarity down to, and we'll be talking about these things soon in a series of posts, I'm sure, down to at what points developers can expect things like, okay, we get, for example, a lot of questions on how are fees going to work on Radix. So we've got down to an answer of how they're going to work, not the specific numbers for what a particular operation will cost, but what the the broad manner in which we'll do fees and how those get communicated to the user and how those fee tables get adjusted. We have answers to all these things now, and we can start to get this information out to the community so they can make better decisions on how they choose to implement their designs if they're thinking of launching for Babylon.
That's awesome.
But Builders
awesome.
Week was fantastic. Absolutely great. We all had a great time. We all did heavy skull sweat. I think that was in my lifetime, I can't think of a time when I probably burned more calories just on brain work for 2 straight weeks. But it was great. It was utterly exhausting and a lot of fun.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. And that sort of like also feeds into us growing the team as well. We've been hiring, we continue to hire great people. We've had a number of new starts over the last couple of weeks. A bunch of the planning that came in Builders Week is going to go into sort of our strategy planning for sort of more resources on the things that we think we need to deliver by Babylon and beyond, and how that resource plan comes into our hiring plans is sort of that are already being executed on. We're going to be hitting 65 people in the next month or so. So it's like it's grown pretty quickly, but it's been great because we were able to hire. When hiring's always this balance between seniority and sort of like head count, where you don't want to have too many people and not enough senior people who can sort of like help coordinate. And we seem to have grown a nice lockstep with that this time round, which has been fantastic. So, huge congratulations to Jeremy for continuing to expand out the marketing team. And actually, just on that topic, like, what do you feel you guys have been learning sort of since the launch of Alexandria about what's mattering and what your what your sort of like key insights are so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. We've definitely grown the team a lot. We've added 3 community liaisons, 1 in each region. We have a marketing operations manager starting next week, which I think is just going to make us more effective. I think we've, as a marketing organization, I think we've learned a lot about staying focused, picking our big rocks and staying focused on the things that truly matter to move the needle. So I think we've done a good job of highlighting that. We've put some structure in. We've really renewed our efforts on aligning with the community. We had our first Radvocates call last week. We have fortnightly calls with the Community Marketing Council. And we're pushing our what we call our Radix Revelations meetup. So if you want to host one anywhere, let us know. We'll totally get behind you. We've got a meetup in a box. So we're just trying to make our community more empowered to go out and evangelize Radix in a consumable way. You're going to see a lot more content. I think that was the big, you want to talk about insights, is that we've done a great job of creating like the 30-page, PhD level dissertation stuff. And And this is my first roundtable, so I have all kinds of stuff going on here. So I think we've done a really good job with that. And I think we've really focused on just, helping people be more successful. I think you're going to see that the content that we've created is designed to fill that gap in a visually empowering way so that our community member can go out and help people begin their journey down to up to the Radix Revelation, I should say.
We're also reaching some more people as well. Obviously, our performance marketing team, which Jeremy hired at the start of the year, have just started their Reddit ad campaigns as well. So that was quite a big hurdle. But if you're a Reddit user, do keep an eye out. You are quite likely to see a Radix ad.
Right, and also
Twitter,
like
and not only that, but we're doing it more efficiently. We've done some optimizations. We dropped our Twitter marketing costs by nearly 40% just by finding sort of leaks, as it were, and we're just getting smarter about that. So we're spending all of our money in a smarter way to drive the results. But yeah, good shot. And the performance marketing team, actually, that shout out goes to Adam because he hired the guy. So thanks, Adam.
And there's a follow-up question in here about sort of Scripto. Like, what are any updates on the developer programs pre-Babylon, and what are the next steps to getting a wider use of Scripto?
So I'll grab that one. I think there's a couple of key things when we're running the build up to Scripto. So a huge amount of our marketing resource is going towards attracting and growing awareness within developers. But then we've also got something that internally we talk about, which is the kind of developer enthusiasm metric, which is a combination of different things. It's the number of people entering kind of the developer journey by cloning the repo. It's the number of people actually joining communities, the developer program, and also, of course, the number of people pushing content. So doing pull requests, putting up examples, engaging within the developer communities, helping others, and really monitoring those. So as some of you know, we've got obviously a Scripto challenge out now that's still open till the 18th of March. So if you haven't taken part in that, definitely go and join either the developer Telegram or the Scripto channel on Discord and find out some details there, because it's a really great way to get involved. But the key thing about this first challenge is it's a learning opportunity for us within the team to work out how can we structure these in a way that's fun and exciting without feeling too strenuous for the people taking part, because ultimately at this early stage it's about enthusiasts and people who are wanting to have some fun with Scripto. And we harp on and on about it, but it really is about getting people to feel the power of what Scripto can do, and that revolutionary leap, just the same as game engines were for the video game industry. And this isn't an overnight thing. Like the pipeline of getting developers and a new language up and running is multi-year. And even if you look in some of the big reports, I mean, Electric Capital put out a report earlier in the year where it was like 2,500 total devs in all of DeFi is what they reckoned. And it's like, that's a tiny fraction of global developers. I know they have a fantastic slide if you haven't seen it, which compares like all of Web3 devs compared to like C++. And it's nearly as funny as looking at the size of DeFi TVL to like TradFi. And so this is a journey, and it's about learning along the way and getting people who are excited about doing this and helping that journey be more efficient for them as they basically have a quicker time to talent.
So what are we, the developer program, so pre-Babylon developer programs, we've had a sort of a competition that's still ongoing. So if anyone would want to join, what do they need to do, Russell, for that?
I mean, the post that launched it explains the details. In this first one, we just picked exchanges because it's something everybody's familiar with, what an exchange does. So there'd be no, we wanted to start with one that was instantly familiar to everyone, so you could figure, okay, I know how an exchange works.
A decentralized exchange, right?
Decentralized exchange, yeah. We heard over and over again in interviewing people about a year ago, we were conducting a lot of interviews with Solidity developers. And the thing we heard so many times was, it's just not fun anymore. It's just not fun. And I started in Solidity because it was cool to just get a thing working and watch it run on the world. And you could do it all for beer money, man. It was just fun. And now it's so expensive and it's become so complicated. And they can't just go build something. They're like, I wonder if I could get that to work, and go try it and make it happen. So that's what we're trying to do with some of these challenges is, make it fun to build this stuff again. Make it not be about just nothing but, I'm just chasing money and I hate my soulless grind. Let's make DeFi development entertaining again. I think Scripto, if you give it a shot, you'll find, hey, I can relate to this very easily. This seems like all the things that I expect the network to take care of it for me is exactly what the network just takes care of for you. So 100%, I encourage everyone, if you say, I'm not going to make some very high effort entry into the exchange category for this first competition, like just go build one anyway for fun, or take our Radiswap code and do something a little different. Try to, move the pooling off to a separate component or something like that. The point of this is just to get people working on the same thing and get the ideas flowing and see if anybody has some novel idea of how to accomplish something, because that can represent a new way of thinking.
Yeah. So if I can build off of that, Piers? Is that within the protocol of the roundtable? Is that allowed?
Oh, absolutely, do it.
Okay, just making sure. I'm still the rookie.
You haven't got a green screen, so
green screen, exactly. I barely know where the bathroom is around here. Exactly. No, I think Russ's point is really valid, because just because everything Russ says is valid, of course, but beyond that, is,
the indoctrination process worked with you.
I know, clearly I got exactly all of your skull sweats got over here somehow. No, I mean, if our go-to-market is going to revolve around being the easiest path for people into DeFi, we have to have the preeminent developer experience in DeFi. There's no way we're going to get there on day one. And so we need people to bang around and tell us where the shortcomings are holistically, not just the code, but the docs, the community support, everything that goes into DevX. We need to know about that now. So by the time that Babylon is ready to go mainstream, we're ready to go. And people are like, oh, I've got it, man. This thing is epic.
Right. And if anyone's watching this and going, well, like, what are next steps in getting wider use of Scripto? Why aren't you guys doing like a takeover of downtown San Francisco? Why aren't you guys like sponsoring these huge developer conferences and stuff like that? So that stuff comes when you've got that funnel working really nicely. And a lot of the stuff that we're doing is still building that funnel out. It's making sure that every single point in the conversion is we understand what the full journey looks like into Scripto land. We understand where people get stuck in the journey, where they fall out. And that means that as you increase your marketing, which you're already going to see, as Adam says, you go on Reddit, you'll see some Scripto advertising. You go on Twitter, you'll see some Scripto advertising. But this is all sort of like testing out the muscles, doing some hypothesis testing. And the other thing I'd say is like, don't forget there's still stuff to come with Scripto. Scripto is still at v0.3, right? v0.3. The feedback we've been getting from the community has been amazing. We've done some huge increases in the functionality. I don't know how many people saw the intro I gave to Scripto 0.3 in the Radix report a week ago, but the transaction manifest is huge and like unbelievably powerful and is going to do a huge amount for how interesting it is to build to interact with DeFi applications on top of Radix. But then there's still a bunch of stuff that still needs to come. You can't build a front end against it yet. That's still to come. There's going to be a bunch of stuff about fees and all of those kind of things need to come. You're going to need test networks. And so like, this is all the early phases of getting to the point where you can build this reliable, repeatable machine that you can put, fresh people in one side and come out with amazing Scripto devs at the other side who are raring to go and want to build incredible things within the Radix ecosystem. So, it all takes time at the start, but this is because you have to run experiments, lots of experiments and test your assumptions and make sure that you're building the right thing. But we are continuing to ramp up how broad we look, how big the funnel is thrown, and we're starting to see some great results. So that's onto
that as well. Is there will be successes on the way, and so one of the other big bits of feedback I think we spoke about in the last roundtable, but if not in the Radix report, is we need to be celebrating successes from within the community as they happen. So there's already been some great examples of that, and I put a post out I think about 2 weeks ago now for feedback on our celebrating success in the ecosystem plan and how we do that as a repeatable and scalable process as we go from where we are now in, as Piers said, v0.3 to Babylon and beyond. And these successes are going to be built by people like you watching now. And so if you want to help grow Scripto, try it out. Like, it's not about necessarily trying to make a career out of Scripto if that's not what you want. It's about having some fun, trying it, engaging. And one of the biggest things is if you know someone who is a developer, get them to give feedback on it. Just, hey, go and clone the repo, have a go with it, find out what you think of it. If it's nice, if there's any friction or point you think could be better, come and tell us in the Scripto channel. And that feeds directly into the development of this because we're building these tools to empower developers to make the future of finance. And that is why this feedback cycle is so important.
Yeah. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to move on to the next question, but that was really great. So what is the short-term roadmap for the community to look forward to? So there's a few things coming up. I know next week we're going to be going, or from Sunday this week, we're going to be at South by Southwest. which is this sort of awesome conference out in Austin. There's actually a couple of like crypto side events that are happening there as well. But this is going to be following on from the success of CES and Web Summit. We will be also running some experiments with sort of like developer specific. Like what we've discovered is at these events, you end up getting like quite a few devs who are sort of like actively building really interesting applications coming along. We're testing out some developer specific interaction funnels on the stand as well. So that's going to give us some great data about how easy it is to get someone up the curve and understand what crypto is and why it's important. But also it's just a great tech event that we're looking forward to being there. So if anyone's going to be in Austin, please do come by. I'll be standing on the stand. Clement, one of our community, one of our crypto community lead, is going to be there, and a couple of other people as well. So it'd be great to see everyone. But if you're not, then I'm sure you'll be hearing some updates about how the event is going.
Well, also, Piers, where by the end of this week, we're going to have an events page up that has a list of all of our upcoming events that we're going to be at.
Nice.
We're also, yeah, it looks really good. I hope the community likes it, because we want to help people understand like we're out there and we've got more coming. In addition, though, we have an event nomination form. So if you hear of an event, let us know about it, put it in. And then on top of that, we're going to be sharing the criteria that we're using to filter events, because not every event's right for us at this time. So we want to be very transparent about how we're weighing which events make the most sense for us at this time. So between that, and we're also integrating or becoming much more aligned, I should say, with the great events that the Community Marketing Council is doing as well. So I think you'll see between those and the meetups that we're going to help. In fact, I'm going to a meetup on May 1st in New York City.
Nice.
So there'll be, it's just a train ride, no biggie. And
all the community events will be on that page as well. So if you want to run a Radix community event, as Jeremy said before, like we now have a event in a box document on like how to set up a great meetup. And I think what's really important is like a meetup. Piers and I went to an amazing one in Lisbon where there were presentations. There was one in London a couple of weeks ago. And there's even been ones where just some people meet up to have some beers and talk about crypto, Radix, DeFi. Like, if you know some people, you just want to set one up, get in contact. We can help guide you. Jacob's doing an amazing amount of work there about how we can really scale that. And those local personal meetup groups are a great way to grow not only the community, but the ecosystem around here. And I know Piers, when there's more time, can wax lyrical about some of the like Ethereum meetups and stuff that he went to in the early days. So do use that as well.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of stay on this thread, I mean, we had a great call with the Radvocates last week. And one of the things I shared with them is that, the real power of our community is, and this sounds cliche, is the community, of course. And imagine that we could get everybody, imagine if every Radix token holder and every community member said, every single day, I'm going to do one small act of marketing, one tweet, one post, one email, one share, hey, check out this GitHub. I mean, if we had that type of activation every day for 40 seconds, I mean, the impact of that could be monumental. And so no active marketing is too small. Post a meme, do something, have some fun with it. Some of them will blow up in our faces. Okay, that's the game. But some of them are going to work huge. And so we don't have a monopoly on good ideas by any stretch. And I would encourage people to experiment, to try things, and, not let the fear stand in the way of the hopes.
Nice. And I think we also have a developer event coming up as well, right?
We do. We're having one. The team's put together one in Lisbon. You're going to put me on the spot here and ask me what day it is. And of course, I can't remember what day it is, but I want to say
it'll be on the events page.
It'll be on that's why we have
go to the events page.
Go to the events. It's not my job to remember all of them. It's on the events page. That's why it's there. The first of many in Lisbon. So if you know people in Portugal or Lisbon and that sort of area, this would be a great opportunity for them to get hands-on and get down and dirty with Radix and Scripto and what have you. So hopefully they'll show up for that.
If you're based in Lisbon, please do come along. It's going to be a great one. The other question that we always get asked is exchanges. So like in the interim period between the launch of Olympia and the launch of Babylon, like what exchanges can we look forward to? And there's obviously a lot of questions about exchange volume, especially because our volume is split between EXRD and XRD, which means that our volume on XRD, if you just look at it on CoinGecko, looks pretty low for where we sit in the rankings, and even if you add the two together, it's relatively low overall. And a big part of that is exchanges. Sort of the number of places that a token can be traded has a big impact on the total volume for a token. Now, we have several uphill battles as a layer one, which basically comes down to integration timelines. Integrating a new layer one takes quite a lot of time with an exchange versus an ERC20 token or something like that. You tend to also need to have, there's another tier below that, which is custodians. So for an exchange to integrate, you need to be integrated with the custodian providers that the exchanges use. And there's a sort of a number of popular ones. And again, it's the exchange provider's responsibility, generally speaking, to make sure that the tokens are secure. And they have to do things like run nodes to make sure that they have a trusted gateway to the network to be able to submit transactions and all this kind of stuff. And in terms of sort of that integration process, that was gated on things like the gateway node being updated and the documentation around that. And that only came out very recently. And so there's been this sort of ongoing process of lobbying the exchange partners we already have, as well as working with new exchange partners to get the XRD token, which is what we're really focusing on, because that matters from the point of view of looking of the long-term health of the network. The XRD is the important token. But these things, just to continue to set expectations, these things do take a long time. And when I say a long time, the average timeline you're given by an exchange, we're given by an exchange, if it's a tier 1 or a tier 2 exchange, is 9 months. And that's 9 months if they're putting you in the sort of to prioritize list, just because the amount of backlog they have, the difficulty in integrating new layer ones. And honestly, these exchanges are constantly bombarded with very large numbers of projects, and a layer one is a harder lift than just sort of the next food coin or something like that. Maybe that feels like I'm being old, actually. Food coins were 2020. But yeah. So it is something that continues to be a priority for us. We do have full-time members of staff who are working full-time on this and spending time working with exchanges, getting things like integration documents translated into other languages, things like working with their dev teams, things like working with custodian partners and stuff like that. But just being a new layer one makes it take longer. And to add on top of that, the really smart exchanges will often ask us about our release plans. And so, Babylon coming up, the question is, is that going to change integration again? And often we obviously have to say, yes, that's going to change integration again, which can make people hesitant to go to commit to an integration now that they think is going to change substantially in the future. So all of these things are just an ongoing process, but it's not going to move quickly. And I'm sorry to disappoint anyone on that. It just does take time. But everything that we do in Radix is all about the long game. And we know that integrating XRD and focusing on that is really where the time needs to be spent, on engineering, on resources, on the relationships we have to make sure that long term, as many bridges into the Radix network are available, as many trading venues are available. What's really great about the network inherently supporting tokens is that once they've integrated the XRD and once they've integrated the Babylon network, supporting any token that's built on top of the Radix network is even easier than supporting something like the Ethereum ERC20 standard. So we're hoping that this initial hard engineering process is going to end up meaning that it's a lot easier for anyone who does choose to build on top of on Babylon to actually get integrated into exchange once we've done the hard initial lift of getting those exchanges to integrate us properly. I don't know if you have anything to add to that. Yeah,
they don't have to do any diligence on examining the ERC20 contract, for example, to see if it's well implemented and are there trapdoors built into it and that sort of thing. It's token's a token on the network. You can see all the flags that are associated with it, and it behaves very predictably.
I think the only thing I'd add is that it is a high priority for us. So there are multiple conversations going on in parallel, and as Piers said, there's people working full time on this, and conversations are happening essentially daily with various partners involved in that stack, and it's something we know is really important. And also global coverage is important as well. And so there are obviously regions that are more challenging due to regulatory conditions, and that's something which we are aware of and put extra resources in to try and accommodate, but there are timelines involved with that.
So it will happen. It's just not going to happen quickly. And we can't really do much about that. Interesting, sort of on the short term, sort of interesting new staff hires. I mean, we're hiring great people all of the time. But on the stablecoin research side of things, we hired someone a little bit of time ago that's sort of really coming up the curve on that. And I hope that is going to be to the point where we can start really diving into this concept of what the stablecoin reserve could potentially be applied to, or at least what is feasible within the stablecoin space, because I think that there's a lot of interesting sort of traction that's happened in the market around stablecoins. If you look at what's happening with Terra and their stablecoin and how that interacts with Luna, if you look at sort of Frax and Fay and a bunch of other sort of like stablecoins that I would say that the Gen 2/Gen 3 stablecoins, plus things like Abracadabra Finance and Magic Internet Money that sort of underpins that stablecoin system, and then sort of like Convex and the things that are happening on that side of things. And obviously, there's the more extreme ends of that with Ohm DAO and their sort of like protocol own like liquidity concepts, and there's some really while it did blow up as a project, Popsicle Finance and Wonderland, they've had some really interesting concepts inside them as well. So I think there's a lot of really interesting thought that has been going in the space, and we now have someone full-time sort of looking in this and doing some real deep economic analysis, which is great. But that again, that's a lot. That's going to take a while before we really start pushing that to the fore, at least post Babylon, because launching something like that before Babylon would be a little bit crazy, considering all of the things that we have to do as well. But that has definitely started moving, and we look forward to sharing some more details with that further down the line. Moving on to the next question, which is
before we leave short-term roadmap, I just want to stay for the crypto interested folks. Yeah. The next release of 0.4 is going to be it's this redesign of the authorization model that we've talked about a bit in channels and here. But it's also the release of our public test environment, which will finally be a way for you to just leave the confines of your local simulator and say, oh, Adam's deployed a component, I will go interact with it. And it will also let you, if you are a front-end developer, be able to actually, hook up a web page in front of this thing. The Web3 wallet portion of it will be completely, it's a hole in that space right now. It's just going to be completely marked out with there'll be a simple command line tool where you kind of paste stuff in or something like that. Or maybe a very basic browser extension that all it does is just sign anything it's given. But it will let you finally see, it's like the all-up test of the rocket on the pad, where I can actually get a front end, which is talking to something, and I can build a transaction, sign it, have it work on the network, and then go see the results in my account. And I can call someone else's stuff, and I can compose it all together. So that's currently where I'd say it's not yet 100% confidence for end of April, but very, very likely that we'll have that done by end of April. And so that should be a nice boost for if you would say, okay, I've sort of reached the end of the stuff I want to play with. I want to now use other people's things and see it running on a web page, you'll be able to do that once we release the public test environment.
That's awesome. So people can now build like their own front end on things, and so now it will not look more like a DeFi application rather than just a bit of back end code.
Right. It's right now it's kind of, you see a tech demo, right? It's ultimately it's a console window showing you output. You could actually put it up on a web page now, and we'll have a very primitive, very early SDK to generate a transaction manifest from JavaScript.
That's really cool. That's really cool. I'm excited to see what people build with that. Okay, next question. This is one we've been asked. We sort of see asked quite a lot, and we should probably have a little bit of a conversation about it, which is two-way Instabridge. I've sort of spoken about exchanges. US exchanges sort of fall into the category of their long conversations, and it takes a while to get integrated with a layer one, and the US ones tend to be sort of a bit more strict in how they operate. So that's sort of like longer ongoing conversation. But two-way Instabridge is something that we get asked a lot about. So what's happening with two-way Instabridge, Russ?
Yeah, you can think of it as we've expanded the scope of Instabridge dramatically since it was initially conceived. And to back up a second, basically for all the things we want to achieve, which include things such as taking fiat for crypto, taking crypto for crypto, doing wrapped assets, so I could have wrapped ETH on the Radix network, and going the other direction as well. If I had a token on Radix and I wanted a wrapped version on Ethereum, for example, these are all things we want to do with Instabridge. And this initial release, the architecture isn't fit for purpose for expanding it to do all these different things. So we've gone back to begin re-implementation of Instabridge in a way that will achieve all these goals, as well as have a much greater level of plugging into things necessary for anti-money laundering, like various things like Chainalysis, and doing this in a way that it can also achieve this function both at Olympia and at transition to Babylon. We basically had to go back and said, look, we have to start with a new code base for this. Two-way Instabridge falls into that category. So we are not going to attempt to try to get the current architecture to support that. That's going to be part of the larger reimplementation, which will roll out in phases. I can't give a hard timeline on that right now, but it is priority 0 for an entire technical team that's working on the Instabridge reimplementation. So more news on that to come, but we could think of it as, and that we will be supporting US-based people with the Instabridge reimplementation. At that point, you'll be able to do both. It's the two-way, if you want to say, I want to go XRD back to EXRD, or if there's other assets on network going back the other direction. So more news to come on that we've concluded a whole bunch of design work on making sure that this architecture will be able to last forever and be supportable. And we're doing at this stage, it's on an internal implementation just for use within the team. There's an early form of it that we'll have out soon, which will teach us a lot about making sure that our assumptions were correct. And then it's on to implementing the public facing version.
I think just sort of like in terms of business scope, right? We realized that one of the biggest problems in crypto today is the onboarding, offboarding experience. It's kind of insane if you go to your friend who's like, oh, I've heard about this crypto thing. I've heard about this DeFi thing. How should I get started? You go, right. So first thing you need to do is go and get a Coinbase exchange account. And then once you've done that, you need to deposit fiat there. And then you get your cryptocurrency. And once you've got your cryptocurrency, you need to get this new thing called a MetaMask wallet. And you need to get a seed phrase. And you need to move your tokens out of your Coinbase wallet to your MetaMask wallet. And don't forget to buy some Ethereum so you've got the gas fees. And then once it's in the MetaMask wallet, you then have to go to this new website where you have to interact with it. You have to and it just becomes this insane experience, and it's insane at many levels, right? And the MetaMask experience, and I've spoken about this a lot, is insane for many reasons. This sort of like blind signing process, the way in which you have no idea what the app is actually asking you to do, the way in which you're not sure what your interactions is, which causes a load of hacks that are happening at the moment, but also that whole onboarding process as well. What we realized is that there's an opportunity to build the really difficult bit in the middle of all of that process to be completely seamless with large parts of our ecosystem infrastructure. And so like anyone who's familiar with Instapass and what that is, that's sort of like is the seed of a much bigger idea which will eventually allow people to go from cash to crypto and crypto back to cash, and as many different crypto tokens as possible into the Radix ecosystem and out of the Radix ecosystem, all within as easy a user experience as possible. But this typifies a lot of decisions that we've made in Radix, which is that to rush the delivery of a thing to get a short-term gain, which is like allowing the EXRD to go back to XRD to go back to EXRD, that it will essentially will take away developer resource and time to actually architect it properly, which is still well within the sort of the time frame that we need to hit Babylon and when this like sort of ball really starts rolling in terms of what we expect on ramping to look like for the Babylon network, and when people actually have things to do available on the Babylon network, like decentralized exchanges or Aves or those kind of things. So this is all laying groundwork stuff. We learned an awful lot with version 1 of Instabridge, and we learned very much how not to build it. And so, that has been incredibly helpful in maturing our approach to sort of the second version of it, which will also be a lot more modular and it give us a lot more scope for being able to add functionality that we think long-term strategically is critically important for, DeFi to be able to go mainstream.
And having that much more full featured lets us get a much better wallet experience right out the jump. So if you say you want to get on Radix, you install the wallet software, you get your credit card handy, there'll be a nice flow that you can just follow through that will take you through having the availability of Instabridge to take fiat. We can make that non-intimidating. We don't have to hand you off to somewhere and say, go do all these steps and remember to come back here and now start this next workflow. It can be one seamless experience. And that also serves as the in all these cases, when we do these things, these are all two open standards. So we say, look, we've done one. We implemented one. You can see it working. If you now wish to build your own service that accepts fiat and is crypto, you can integrate that with our wallet too, because it's all through open standards. And the goal is always to just nail that user experience so that it is not only the extraordinarily risk tolerant and the extraordinarily willing to suffer through a lot of pain to get activated, to make it so it's just easy to recommend to my friend who's only very lightly technical and can work his Xbox and that's it, and say, look, just go here, install the software, click that. I just have a credit card and want to get started, and you'll be nicely handheld through.
Right, and what Russell says about open standards cuts the other way as well. Like Instabridge will be implemented to open standards, so will Instapass. So if you want to integrate that into your wallet, again, you can create the same kind of user experience that we're like. There's no like most favored citizen or most favored nation in these applications and services that we're building. It's all designed to be that like, here's some example implementations. This is what we think is a fantastic user experience. And then here's the tools that enable you to build as much of that or as little of that as you possible into the experience that you want to build for your users. Okay, so we haven't yet, just TLDR, there is not yet a timeline on two-way bridge, but it is absolutely part of our priorities for delivering, but it sort of goes into a wider piece that we think is going to be strategically important for the network as we go into Babylon. Number 4, what do you think the current wave of burnouts of high-profile DeFi devs and founders? Have you been following this closely, Russell?
I have not been following it closely. I only, Andre was the one that I saw. But no, I haven't really. I've been at Builders Week for 2 weeks, man. I'm out of the loop. I've like been shut away in a cave.
What do you think that this?
I could only go from prior comments I read from him was basically just that I know there's tremendous. This space has community expectations are extraordinary here as far as time to delivery and amount of, in the case of any DeFi projects, like the amount of expected return. It's like you've got like a power creep in a game where I own 200% a year. Come on, man, you got to do better than that, or I'm not paying attention. I can easily see how people can get frustrated with this. Or you're like, you're putting your heart and soul and everything into something, and like it's never good enough. Or congratulations, you shipped it. Now it's the next day. So now when's my next thing that gives me 250% per year? I mean, when is that, man? You've talked about it for months now. Where is it? So I'm sure that's a contributing factor. But other than that, I haven't read too much.
I think, go on, sorry.
I was going to say, I think the other bit to this is another industry where I've seen this quite regularly is obviously in the video game space, where you have this always on digital native generation effectively. And it's a global feeling as well. So, I mean, anywhere close to the degree of someone like Andre, but like there's times where like I wake up and my Telegram will have multiple notifications from people. And it won't just be multiple different people. Some people will be like, I messaged you 4 hours ago. Why have you not replied yet? And it's like, because I was asleep. It was 3 a.m. you messaged me, and it's now like 7 a.m. and I'm looking at this. Like the person before that messaged me at 2 a.m., which I answered. Like sleep is required for human like function. And that this is quite right. It pushes people to do great things. And then the other piece you've got with DeFi is obviously, I think people forget how few people are involved in dealing with some of the massive applications going on here. So again, going back to that kind of 2,500 developers working full time in all of DeFi. Now, that gets people really emotive. And then you chuck very large sums of money on top of that. Like, and that's stressful, not only for the people doing it, but if you're someone who's built an application that is handling potentially hundreds of millions of dollars, and you've built it using Solidity, and you are very competent in Solidity, but therefore know all the ways in which there could be problems, and you know that there's an army of people on the other side either looking for those problems for kudos or looking to exploit them, to basically hack them and get massive sums of money out of that. And it's not even your money that could be lost. That's hugely stressful. And when you add all of those things together, it's not surprising that occurs. And if you've got a very small talent pool for that demand of innovation and improvement, which these people can deliver, is also fed into those people or funneled into those people a lot more than you may see in other industries when there's a larger talent pool and more people who can back you up and help you deliver these amazing things that we know DeFi is capable of doing.
And it's a space of so many grandiose promises, all these projects and then on the basis of that promise, then they kind of do the project. Whoa, Project Y said they're going to do all this. What say you to that? Where's your answer to that? Does anybody believe they will actually be able to do that? Now we must respond to this hypothetical situation where their last 7 promises didn't succeed. Why do you expect number 8 will be the one that could? Anyway, so it's a tough space for anybody to especially when you care deeply about what you're doing, to be able to weather the community storm a bit.
I think it also comes back to that, make it fun again, which you said as well, Russell. Like a lot of people who got in this space and are very prominent in this space now came in when it was for fun. It was for beer money. It was to do innovative things with a new industry. And very, very rapidly.
Could I get this working?
Yeah. And
it's like, how cool, this actually works. Wait, now there's hundreds of millions of dollars in it. Now there's billions of dollars in it. Oh my God.
So yeah, I think that's a big driver of this as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd just throw on it, maybe putting on my marketing hat a little too quickly here, but it comes back to what we talked about before with developer experience, right? I mean, I'm not anywhere at the Andre level by any stretch, but the idea that he probably has to spend a lot of time, double, triple, quadruple checking, auditing, and all that stuff, like that part's not fun to Russell's point. And if we can remove the opportunities to screw up, with our, revolutionary DeFi engine that we've invented, which in 20 years is going to be obvious, that is it's like an emancipation for a whole class of developers who are looking to experiment and try things without having as much vulnerability as they probably have today if they go down the traditional routes.
Right. And it also gives the opportunity for people to build bigger teams that they can trust more. Like like when something is high risk and difficult, you tend to have smaller teams, which when it works well, it can feel great. But when it hits high stress situations, you can't just bring people in to help. And that lack of just ability to bring people up a curve and get them to a point where you're like, oh no, I can definitely delegate this important part of my application. That doesn't happen in DeFi with the way that you build with Solidity today. Like, every single tiny change could mean something critical. So now you have this constant high stress situation, and every additional person you add to your team is another stressor. It's not a help. It's not a delegation. It's like, oh my God, there's now another person who could fundamentally break something about this application that is managing hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. And like, yeah, I think crypto, like this burnout often happens a combination of things. It's not just stress; it's stress and negative. It's stress and negative emotion that work together in this cycle that make that creates this mental strain where you have very high cortisol for very extended periods of time, and your brain essentially just goes into shock, and you can't think anymore. But that's partly as a result of the negative psychological effect of negative situations. So when the market's going up, you might be stressed, but you're good. You're feeling good because you're getting wins. Like, more money's coming in. Your community loves you because the price is going up. Like, you get all of these positive reinforcers that kind of make the stress okay. But then, like, when you get a flip and suddenly your community turns to be less supportive, that you get more complaints, you're suddenly in this negative cycle where the stress doesn't let up. It still continues, if not increases, but now you have this negative psychological effect as well. And what's really interesting about developers leaving is that, like, there's a lot of people who are sitting there who are going, oh yeah, Andre Cronje would never leave because he's got all of these billions of dollars. Like, he's tied, so I can be as shitty as I want to be to this person because he's tied there because of, all of the money that he's going to lose. And it's like, that's not the whole human experience, guys. Like, that's just a little part of it. And like, really, if you think that is what's going to hold people there over the head with these insane expectations, you're going to see this mass exodus happening because the industry doesn't have any allowance for people to have personal time, for people to have time off, for people to have mental gaps and breaks, which do lead to these burnouts when you get high stress situations. I'd
just like to add something to that as well, which is, this is, while it's apparent and topical now in DeFi, is in no way unique. So for those of you who've ever listened to my stuff, like, I used to be involved in like elite level sport as well. And this is hugely common in that environment as well, especially for people who suddenly end up in that situation. So like in gaming, esports as well is another example. You get a teenager who had never really been in the limelight and was just really good at Counter-Strike, and then suddenly gets picked up with the team, and then 6 months later is competing in front of millions of people. And those millions of people are tweeting at them constantly. And like, when I was involved in elite sport, we had a full-time member of staff, which was a psychologist. And that psychology wasn't just about race time psychology. It was about the whole holistic lifestyle. How do you make sure that you are getting that downtime, dealing with stress, spending enough time with family, doing stuff that's important to you? And there's a whole engine behind that within sports teams and other high performance environments. And so when you get a rapid growth industry, that support system, all aspects of it don't necessarily grow at the same rate, especially if there's friction points to it. So don't take anything that we've said here as a critique of the people who are experiencing this within DeFi. It is the nature of a very high growth space like this, and something that tends to improve as the entire industry matures, rather than it being something about the individual.
Right. I think that anyone who suffers burnout, like, it is in no way their fault. It's almost always as a result of external stresses that come, like, from taking on commitments and all this kind of stuff that just becomes unmanageable. And the horrible thing about burnout is it happens and you just can't do anything. There's no like, nicely managing your way out of burnout. You get burnout and that's it. And you just have to drop everything. Otherwise you're just never going to recover. And It's not good to see, but I think that it's a combination of better tools that will lead to greater ability to delegate and securely for these critical applications, and a more mature approach to the concept of mental health within the industry. Last question. What are the team's take on governments using money as leverage for sanctions? If governments don't control money, would they have less leverage over other countries, e.g. the current situation, fewer ways of sanctioning Russia? So let's start with Adam. What's your thoughts on this?
So this is obviously a hugely complex global issue. And in light of that, I think it's also really important to look at the role of a DeFi protocol, such as Radix. And to me, it's very similar to the role of the internet. At the protocol layer, its purpose is to distribute information and data. And at the application layer, there may be controls on that is decided upon by the people who make those applications and implement them. And I think that's something that DeFi as an industry is going to have to look at. And just in the same way as the internet made data far more accessible, there were huge benefits to that. There's also some things that were negative from that we are still learning about today, and we're still finding ways to balance as we evolve, really is something that affects us at an entire species level. And problems like that or challenges like that is something that does take a lot of time to work out. And it's a job of a protocol to enable any of these outcomes to be possible for the people who are building on top of it. And to me, that comes back to our vision, which is our job is to give builders the tools to make the DeFi system work and to be the infrastructure behind that. How that actually goes into these incredibly complex situations like going on in the world today is something that is going to discover as the industry evolves. But then also the industry does amazing things. I don't know if you want to give some examples from our community recently, Piers.
Right. Like the Radical Penguins, which is an NFT project being built on top of Radix, created a one-off peace penguin, sort of in light of the war going on in Ukraine, and ended up raising over $2.2 million for charity, which is unbelievable. So I think that the ability for you to match finance with social movements is going to be one of the most powerful things that comes out of these public ledgers and decentralized finance and all that kind of stuff. But there's going to be negative points as well. I think it's like any radical piece of technology. Humans will find ways of using it for good and for bad, and our job is to make the tools as good as possible, rather than to make a decision necessarily on how those tools are deployed. I don't know if you have a view on this, Jeremy.
I agree with you. I think the short answer to the question is yes, it will make it more difficult for governments to sanction other governments in the traditional sense. And I think that's the challenge that all governments and all individuals face, which is we have this new paradigm that's arrived, and we have no choice but to accept its arrival. So the question then is, how do we, deal with this arrival and still try to maintain some degree of society functioning at a civilized level, whatever. I mean, you could even argue it's not so civilized now, different topic, but at a civilized level. And you see this in on multiple fronts, whether it's how our securities laws are applied or things like that. So it's going to be frustrating for a while as governments and regulators try to and citizens try to understand, okay, given the arrival of this new DeFi paradigm, what do we do so that we can effectively mount resistance to completely unacceptable levels of aggression by a rogue state, essentially. So it's challenging. There are ways to, I believe that there will be ways that we can address it, but I think what's critical is we have to recognize that the old ways aren't going to work, and we need new ways to address it. And I think that's the challenge for everybody. But look, DeFi's here. There's nothing you can do about it. So it's going to happen. Whether Radix builds it or somebody else builds it, it's going to happen. Obviously, it's going to be Radix, different issue there. But the question then becomes: is okay, given the arrival of DeFi, how do we deal with some of these issues? It's a critical issue, but we have no choice but to kind of confront it.
I think an interesting thing you said, Piers, was around combining like social aspects of capital in DeFi. And I think, to me personally, one of the obvious benefits of DeFi is giving users more choice on how they move their assets around and what they do with it. And so, again, hugely complex topic, but I can see that influencing the way individuals govern how their money works and what their money's put towards, not only in current affairs situations, but there's a trend to definitely a trend towards sort of like green investing or social investing and stuff like that we're already seeing in TradFi that can be massively accelerated in DeFi because more builders can build things that cater to that demand in the market. And this can lead to many, many beneficial things. And as others have said, also challenges that I think will come to solutions in due course.
Yeah, I bought an NFT recently that actually represents 1 hectare of land in the Amazon.
Nice.
And and along with other people, and together we now, through a custodian in Brazil, so there's an element of CeFi in there, building what they call the green wall so that those lands can't be slashed and burned. And then there's a nice little thing where eventually they believe they'll be able to sell the carbon credits from those lands and pay them as dividends to the NFT holders. So, and meanwhile, Ukraine's raised over $50 million from individuals around the world. That would never have happened in a previous paradigm either. So, there's both sides to it, and we just have to kind of confront, the good and the bad.
On that note, I think we'll wrap up for today. Thank you, Adam, Jeremy, and Russell. It has been a pleasure speaking with you, and we'll see you all on the next roundtable in a month's time. If there's anything that anyone wants addressed at that next one, or any questions you have, please do make sure you submit them in our community Telegram channel or on our Discord, and make sure that Jacob sees them and he'll pick them up and make sure that we get them asked in the next one. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.